So let me first try to explain how I'm going to do this. So jihad, the most oppressed concept in Islam. 3 points before proceeding. So number one, the scope and the aim of this talk. What I want to do is help us together, all of us, to understand the concept of jihad in Islam. Okay? So I'm not going to talk about politics today. Okay? Yes, I do appreciate there are lots of political factors that has pushed some Muslims or so-called Muslims to do some things in the name of Islam. What might be those factors? Not Muslims. We cannot say all Muslims are the only one who are responsible for this. Other forces are also responsible. Yeah, we know that. I know that. I appreciate that. That is not the subject for today. Okay? We just want to have some education together about what Islam says about jihad. That's all, right? That's the first thing. Number two, the structure. The first part, which is this session, I want to talk about some basic concepts, and I try to keep it interactive. I'd like to keep it interactive, but I should also say that there's a lot that I need to cover. So I try to see how I can keep the balance there. Part two, hopefully after the break, that will be the core talk. What is jihad in Islam? So I will try to go deep into the concept of jihad in Islam and to understand what is it really. Part three, conditions of jihad. So that will be after the second break. We talk about conditions of jihad and hopefully some time for question and answer. If I find time, I may try to do part of part two in part one or part of part three after part two, just to save more time for question and answers. Third point, the methodology of this talk. The methodology is deliberation on the Quran. That is what we normally do not do. Okay? The Quran itself says that this is a book for tadabbur. Tadabbur means analysis, means deliberation. There is a reason for that. Okay? All of you have read the Quran. You know that, yes, in a number of places, the Quran very clearly, categorically mentions some principles and categories. But it is not like everything is mentioned categorically and just in front of you. You need to look for it. And of course, when you look for it, then you will find it. And that is that deliberation, which I feel and I think is one of the reasons that the style of the Quran is this, because it always encourages deliberation. So what I want to do is trying to understand the concept of jihad by deliberating on the Quran together. That's not what we normally do. We normally either look at one verse only and just try to understand the whole religion based on that verse, or we read the Quran for sabab and then go to hadith and try to understand religion from hadith only. Okay? That's not what we want to do. Now, to start with, as a sister very nicely started the session with raising some of the concerns that we all have these days about what is happening, something does not make sense. Okay? In our knowledge and in what we are seeing being practiced. In our knowledge, for instance, Quran says religion is not compulsion. La ikraha fi din. That's in Surah Al-Baqarah. Religion is not compulsion. Yeah? But the Prophet, at the latter stage of his mission, had offensive fight with kuffar. And that was as per the instruction of the Quran. The verse that many people refer to it as verse of sword, which basically says, go and kill them. It's very difficult to argue that that's defensive. It's not really defensive when you read the verse. Okay? Because at that point, kuffar were in a very weak position. Yeah? So there can be a bit of confusion there. What's going on there? There is no instruction in the Quran to punish a person for apostasy or blasphemy. There's absolutely nothing in the Quran about it. In fact, when you read the Quran, when it talks about a person who leaves the religion of Islam, it talks about it in a way that gives impression that nothing goes to him. He just lives normal life and then he dies. And then of course says, yes, when he dies, he goes to hell, right? But it never says, go and kill them, or even go and punish them, or just arrest them, or say something bad to them. It says nothing. Yet, there are some authentic reports at the time of the Prophet that some people were being killed with the instruction of Prophet for making fun of Muslims or Prophet's wives. We do have that hadith, okay? And we cannot argue that, oh, this is all not authentic. It's very difficult to say that. Yeah, some of them are not authentic, some of them are not reported very accurately, but there are ahadith that we cannot deny, okay? And we also have hadith from the prophets, which again, many scholars consider to be authentic. I also think it is authentic. The hadith that says that, if the person leaves Islam, go and kill him. So again, what's happening here? Because again, when you look at the Quran, there's a verse in the Quran that says we can kill people only for two reasons. If the person is murderer, or if he is guilty of creating anarchy in the land, fasad fil ard, which is far more than just becoming an apostate. That is something totally personal. So it doesn't make sense, right? And then what we are seeing in practice, we are all watching the news. To many, even Muslims, acts that are being done in the name of jihad these days, in the name of defending the Prophet, just seem not quite moral. What is about this? Why is it that when I read the history of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I read about the killings there, I don't feel it was immoral? And not because Prophet Muhammad did that. You just read it within the context and you just found, yeah, it makes sense. But why, when we see at our time people are trying to do the same form of act of violence, it just doesn't make sense for us. You just think that something is wrong with this. Yeah? So those cartoonists make this cartoon from Prophet Muhammad, something horrible to do, they have done it, right? So we need to do something about it, right? Okay, so Prophet instructed some people who made fun of his wives or himself or his companions, instructed them to go and kill them. Let's just go and kill them. Some people go and kill them, and we are not satisfied about it. It doesn't make sense. We don't get that feeling of satisfaction that, yeah, that's fine. No, that's not fine. It doesn't make sense. Things are getting worse. It doesn't feel moral. There is something wrong here. There's some misunderstanding here. And if I manage to explain for you the way that I see it, I think that is going to be the aim of this meeting. What is that misunderstanding? And this is something serious, brothers and sisters, because I think, talking about jihad, one of the jihads that we need to have, all of us, is the jihad of spreading the correct understanding of Islam around, and in particular around Muslims, then non-Muslims. Okay? So what is wrong? What is the problem here? So the first session, I want us to go to the root, to the very beginning of this problem. Okay? Let's start from the root of the concept. Question: what is the essence of fairness in God's judgment about human being in the hereafter? Does anyone know the answer? Because if you have the answer, I can skip the next 10 slides. The question is complicated, so what I mean is this. What measure is taken by divine judgment that has made it a fair judgment? Yes, please.
Can I attempt an answer?
Please do that.
If we see prophecy as mercy of God, the fact that he's appointed prophets, so I tend to think of the supplication that Prophet Adam made to Allah and said, I want to seek forgiveness, how do I do that? And from then on, Allah appoints a lot of prophets to bring guidance to mankind. So he has taken extraordinary measures to inform us about Deen Hanif or true monotheism, and also given us free will. And based on those two, if we do not make the right choices, even after having received that information, then it's only fair that God questions us and holds us accountable. At least that's how I see it.
Thank you very much, sister. That's a very good start. Other views? So see, let me explain that. For instance, if I say that, look, I'm a teacher, right? So I mark assignments. And I'm a very fair teacher in marking. You can ask me, well, in what way will you make sure that you are fair? Okay? I may answer, well, whatever I mark is going to be on the basis of the questions that I have already given to students. And whatever mark I give to students, then there's a second marker who will mark these as well. And then there's an external marker as well. So as a whole, it will be quite fair. Yeah? That would be my answer. Now, obviously, God is not going to ask a second person or an external person to confirm his judgment. And he has promised us in the Quran that my judgment is fair. Okay? And what I'm asking is that what is that thing, that element that God has put into the system of his judgment that makes it fair? Any more views? No?
Given us free will and judgment.
Okay, we're getting much closer now. So yeah, so we have free will. So it is not like we do bad things and that is forced by God himself and then he puts us in hell. That doesn't make sense. So very good. We do have free will. Sister?
In Scripture, he's also taken measures to preserve divine revelation.
Mm-hmm.
He's given us, I shouldn't use the word, but he's sort of given us the textbook on which he's going to ask a question. I know that's right.
Okay, when you say giving us, okay, he did not give that to you. He gave that to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions. Then it reached us. And this might be a personal question. I'm very sorry about that. But are you from Muslim parents as well? Okay, so you're from Muslim parents just like myself. So by default, we are Muslims, right? And of course, like the follower of every religion, we think that, oh, I'm very lucky because I'm on the right path and others are misguided, right? And then we find the Quran and, oh, this is my guide then. So it sounds all a bit too comfortable. Because if I was a Baha'i or a Christian or a Jew or a Zoroastrianist or even atheist, if I had, well, not maybe atheist, if I had asked the same question, a sister could answer exactly the same way. The only difference is that you say Quran, he says Bible. He says the book of Aqdas, the book of Baha'is. That one says Avesta, book of Zoroastrians. Brother Khalid.
Basically, this fairness in Allah's judgment, that will have few things. First is that what is he given in nature, and has the person preserved that nature, and has that person be honest and truthful. Second is that whatever is the human shortcoming, because human beings can't know for certain whether there'll be heaven or hell, or whether there's God or not. God has given a very clear sort of guidance through his prophets. And the third is that God will give concession to human beings according to their circumstances. Say, for example, if a person was born in a place or in circumstances where God's guidance could not reach him, in that case, he will be judged only on the first parameter, what was given to him as by nature. And similarly, all the other shortcomings we have, for example, a person is deprived, didn't have good parenting, didn't have a good sort of upbringing, or was too poor to understand. So all those things will be given concession, will be taken care of while giving a final word.
Thank you very much, Brother Khalid. So we talked about two things here. Both of them are very important and very true. First of all, different dimensions of guidance that Allah Ta'ala has given us. And secondly, personal circumstances. And that God will definitely take that into account. It's not going to be just black and white. Brother Mujahid, you wanted to say something?
You're talking about day of judgment here, on the day of judgment.
Yeah.
I think it has to be truthfulness.
What's the meaning of truthfulness?
That a person who has been true to whatever information he had in this world.
Honesty.
Honesty.
That's very good. Okay.
The problem with that is, like you said, we are born Muslims, so it's easy to sit in this room and say Quran is the right book.
Mm.
There'll be a lot of people who would have heard about Islam but didn't look further into it because at their lifetime they were sure that either the Bible or the Vedas or whatever it is that they're following is the right way. So they didn't look clearly into the other.
So that goes back to what Brother Mujahid says. They are honestly following what they are doing, yeah?
What happens is, if they do that honestly, if honesty is enough to get the person to paradise, that means the Muslims will have to start accepting that people who are not Muslims will also have paradise.
Oh, is that too difficult to accept?
What do you think?
Very good, brother. Very good point. Okay. I think that was very helpful, all of the contributions. So let me now go on and try to see what we can get from the Quran in answering that. As I said, going back to the very beginning to explore the answer, let's go back to the beginning. فَسَجَدَ الْمَلَائِكَةُ كُلُّهُمْ أَجْمَعُونَ إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ اسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. You all know this story, yeah? Look at this. The one sifat, the one adjective that is used for Iblis is arrogance. Iblis became arrogant. And then this has connected to the word kafir, infidel. There's a link between istikbar and kufr, between arrogance and kufr. Let us remind ourselves. We are talking about the Quran, which we believe is the words of God. It is not like your writing or my writing. I may just put one word somewhere. You ask me, why did you put that? And I say, well, maybe I shouldn't put that there. In our understanding, every letter of the verse of the Quran has a reason to be there. Okay? See this. Now you may tell me, oh, come on, Abdullah, I just took one verse and you try to argue something like that. And I will answer you, well, it's not just one verse. Look at the second one. God says exactly the same expression for human being. Bala. This is what God will say to a person who goes to hell in the hereafter. قَدْ جَاءَتْكَ آيَاتِي فَكَذَّبْتَ بِهَا وَاسْتَكْبَرْتَ وَكُنْتَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. My signs came to you, but you rejected them. You showed arrogance and became one of kafirin. Istakbar wa kana min al-kafirin. Istakbarta wa kunta min al-kafirin. It's the same thing. It's just the grammar is different for obvious reasons. Don't you see that God is giving us the message here? Don't you see what deliberation here leads us to understand? That there is this link between istikbar and kufr, and that the reason that people will go to hell is this arrogance. You may say, okay, 2 verses? Okay, what about this? Look at all these verses. In all these verses, God says, Jahannam is maswan lil mutakabbirin. Maswa means place of residence. So God has made it very clear that Jahannam is place for mutakabbirin. Huh? Then look at this. Maswan lil kafirin. Maswan lil kafirin. Place for kuffar. Allazina kafaru nara maswa lahum. You know maths? Yeah? When mutakabbir belongs to Jahannam and kafir belongs to Jahannam, then that means mutakabbir and kafir are the same. Okay? Simple maths. Brother.
If you go back to those 2 verses you showed us.
I'm not, because presentation will be ruined because I'm recording it. But please go on.
Go back to that. In both the incidences, it's not just arrogance. He had either given a sign or he had asked for a prostration and he said, do it. And the recipient on those sides, whether it be the people whom the signs came to or whether it be Iblis, they refused to do it, with or without arrogance. Okay?
No, not okay. Not okay. With arrogant, not without arrogant. With arrogant. Because if it was without arrogant, the only being that did not prostrate was Iblis. So we are talking about one being here. And God says you did that out of arrogance. So there is no without arrogance in that.
So which comes to my second part of the question.
Let's do that.
Do you have any examples of rejection without arrogance.
Examples of rejection without arrogance. Let me finish my first part. I think we will get to that. Is that okay? I mean, if I do not, if you feel that I did not give you an answer by the middle of part 2, give me a warning. I will definitely give you a direct answer. Can we go on and we'll get back to this? So, arrogance. We can say that in one word, if I ask you, in one word, what takes you to heaven, based on the Quran, not based on views and opinions, your answer should be tazkiyah, purification. That is verse 91, chapter 91, verse 9. Okay? Now, if I ask you, in one word, what takes a person to Jahannam, then for those verses that I showed you, you should say that is takabbur, arrogance. Arrogance is the reason that person goes to Jahannam. Okay? What is arrogance? Definition of arrogance, within the context of religion, of course. To run out of excuses in denying the truth and yet denying it out of arrogance. Okay? So, when the person sees the truth in front of him and he recognizes it, yeah, this is the truth. Yeah, he's right. But I'm going to reject it. That is arrogance. Now I'm going to reject it because I just don't like him. I'm lazy. I want to have my own ways. It's just too much for me. My parents raised me like that. Why should I leave my nation, etc.? That will be arrogance. Okay? Those will go to hell who selfishly choose a wrong path due to their arrogance, not due to ignorance, not due to honest mistakes. Brothers and sisters, if you challenge that statement, if you say people will go to hell even if they were just ignorant, if you say people will go to hell even if it was because of their honest mistake, then I'm not sure how you also believe that God is fair. There's no meaning there for fairness of God. God says, "La yudlamu fatila." Not a tiny injustice will be there. If you are a person who wants to argue, no, actually, if a person chooses a wrong path, even if it was pure mistake, or even if it was because of pure ignorance, he will still go to hell, then I'm sorry, but we cannot say God is fair. Let's then play that way. That's fine. Let's just say, but God is not fair. Okay? This is why we have in the Quran. Now, there are a number of things. I don't think I put all the verses there, but I put the numbers. If you want to take down notes and check them later, you can. Being called Muslim, Jew, or Christian does not count. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. These people who are believing now, which is Muslims, and these Jews and those Christians and these Sabaeans, which was a religion in Arabia, those of them who really truly believe and do righteous things, there is nothing for them to worry about and to be sad about. Desires of believers or people of the book for salvation do not count. لَيْسَ بِأَمَانِيِّكُمْ وَأَمَانِيَّ أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ مَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا, etc. To make sure that I'm not reading the verse wrongly. It is not based on your desires, or Muslims, or the desires of people of the book. One who truly believes and do righteous things, he will be okay. No one is responsible for what is beyond his capacity, what Brother Khalid was referring to. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. God will not hold you responsible for something that is beyond your capacity. Look at this verse, brother. And I invite you to look at it as well. At the end of this Surah Ma'idah, there is a very nice dialogue reported between Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, and God. So the dialogue goes like this. God says to Jesus, did you say these people to worship you and your mother? And Jesus answers, no, I didn't. When I was there, I only said to them they need to worship you. When I wasn't there, you know better than me. Then Jesus does something that is like shafa'ah. You know what is the meaning of shafa'ah? Asking for forgiveness, but in a very nice and respectful way. So Jesus says, إِن تُعَذِّبْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادُكَ. If you punish them, they are your servants. Of course you can punish them. وَإِن تَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ فَإِنَّكَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. And if you forgive them, of course you are Ghafur, you are Rahim. Do you think God, after hearing that from one of his most beloved prophets, will say, I'm going to punish them? Do you really have that image of God in your mind? God doesn't say that. This is what God says. هذا يوم ينفع الصادقين صدقهم. This is the way when the honesty of honest people shall benefit them. That is that honesty that Brother Mujahid was talking about. Meaning, those of your followers who made honest mistake, they were just raised in this community generation after generation. It never even occurred to their mind that they need to think about this, question it, etc. They just honestly followed that. Okay? They shouldn't worry. They shouldn't worry. Now, this is very interesting. So, what I'm saying is that honest mistake, based on these verses of the Quran, will be okay, inshallah. Because God, see, what is that single feature of Allah Ta'ala in relationship with His creation, based on the Quran? كَتَبَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ رَحْمَةً, compassion. This is the reason. If God would have said, كَتَبَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ غَضْبًا, anger is my feature that I have made obligation in facing my creation. Then yeah, you could say, well, perhaps all of these people will go to hell. But he says, كَتَبَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ الرَّحْمَةِ. And that's why we read things like this. Look at this. Disobeying a wrong conviction can hold the person responsible. Now, this is something very interesting. The one that I showed you before was saying disobeying a right conviction, but with honesty, does not make the person to go into trouble. This is the other way around. Now this one, disobeying a wrong conviction can still hold the person responsible. Example is this. You see, Muslims at the start, under the influence of people of the book, in particular Jews, they had this understanding that when we fast, then at the night of the month of Ramadan, during the night, we cannot be with our wives. Okay, that was their understanding. That was the understanding that they got from Jews. Okay, because Jews had that sort of Sharia based on their own understanding. Now, God says it is made lawful to you to be with your wives on the night of the fast. So first clarifying this misunderstanding. They are like dressed for you. You are like dressed for them. Then God knew that you betrayed yourselves. So He has turned to you and has forgiven you. See? God is talking about a ruling that does not exist in Islam. But people, by mistake, were thinking that it does exist. And yet, they were not able to follow that rule. And God says, He has forgiven you. Do you see the point here? This honesty is so important that it works two ways. This right path, you honestly have not recognized it. You're okay. The other way, you have honestly come up with understanding that this is your responsibility and you haven't done it. You will be held responsible. Because God is not interested in forms. God is interested in your heart. God is interested in your intention. This means evil deeds and wrong beliefs only hurt us in the hereafter if the reason for having them is takabbur, not ignorance, not mistake. In other words, being called Muslim or not being called Muslim is not the criteria. Everyone will be judged on the basis of his honest conviction. See, my brothers and sisters, read Surah Al-Baqarah after the story of Adam and Eve. See what is one of the most things that God has absolutely disliked about Christians and Jews. You will find a number of references that you are saying only we will be saved, only we will be saved. Okay? Don't you think that there is a message there for us as well? Are we arrogant enough to say, oh, okay, these are for Jews and Christians? We don't read that. We don't need to read that. Do you really think like that? If you really think like that, then get a copy of the Quran that does not have that part and just has the parts that is about Muslims. It's not like that. God is giving us a message as well. In fact, God, knowing that this Quran will be read by Muslims more than any Christian and Jew, I think this point is actually directly talking to us. So yes, brother, if we find it difficult to believe that non-Muslims will go to heaven, and we think that only us will go to heaven, then we have done the same mistake for which God has become angry with Jews. Simple as that. And I can say it very loudly and very proudly that while a Christian, based on his understanding, will tell you only if you follow Jesus you will go to heaven, and the Jew, based on his understanding, will tell you only if you are a Jew you will be in the best places in heaven. Otherwise, if you are doing good, then you might be in the basis of the heaven. I can proudly say that the Quran says it's not about labels. Forget the labels. It's not about being called Jew or Christian or Muslim or what. It's about what is here. It's about you following your conviction. You being honest about what you have found. And this is the most open-minded way that thinking about religion can be. And the Quran has presented that to us. And I'm very sad to see that people do not pay attention to it. It is there in the Quran. The verse that says, be Jew, be Christian, be Muslim. If you are really true follower of truth, then you will be in heaven. Has been repeated in the Quran two times. Okay? People just don't pay attention to it. This verse about Jesus that I showed you, in how many talks have you heard that verse and its meaning? And then go and try to see how people have tried to change the meaning of some of these things to make them suit to their understanding. The verse that says that about Jews and Christians, etc., then some people argue, oh, this is about Jews and Christians before Prophet Muhammad. Yes, they say this was about Jews and Christians before Prophet Muhammad. Does Quran give us obvious? Who questioned that Jews and Christians before Prophet Muhammad, if they were good, they will go to heaven? This sort of changing the meaning of a verse is something that is happening. Brother.
Yeah, I got one question. You said that it's all about conviction, thinking that what is right, and others are Jews, others Christian, or whatever. So, if you talk to anybody in this planet, others are Christian, others are Jew, or other Muslims, different sects as well. They say that they are on conviction, they are on the right path. So how can you differentiate who's right and who's wrong? Obviously, everybody claims that.
Yeah.
That they are right and others are wrong.
See, brother, these are two different things. When I say the one who follows his conviction will be okay, that is different from saying that what he believes in is right. These are two different things, okay? There are six of us here, okay? Let us say, for instance, na'uzubillah, each one of us is following a different religion, right? If the six of us are honestly following that religion, based on my understanding from these verses, which is very explicit, all of us will be okay in the day of judgment. However, that does not mean that then all six religions are correct. Only one of them may be correct, or none of them may be correct, okay? So these are two different things, okay? I'm not talking about pluralism here. Remember this. This is not pluralism. Because pluralism means that there are millions of right paths. And there are millions of truth out there. Muslims have got one of it. Christians have got another one of it. So Muslims say Jesus was prophet. Christians say Jesus was God. And both is correct. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, Jesus definitely was a prophet. I'm Muslim, I believe in that based on the Quran. If you believe, or Christian, that Jesus is God, you are wrong. No question about that. However, what happens in the hereafter? That is what we are talking about. In the hereafter, you are not going to go to hell simply because you believe Jesus was God. It all depends whether you had that belief out of arrogance or by mistake. And same goes for Muslims. Do you think all Muslims are really following the religion of Islam? Not really. We have Muslims who...
Just one pause. Momin's mother is wanted downstairs. He or she is crying. Thank you. Sorry.
I think I skipped that for the sake of time. We can discuss it more, okay? So, I get back to my question then. What is the essence of fairness in God's judgment about human being in the hereafter? This was the question that I asked you. All the answers that you gave me were very good and contributed to the answer that I was about to say based on what I was talking about. The answer that I was looking for was this. God holds people responsible based on their honest conviction. God does not punish for honest mistakes and innocent ignorance. He punishes for arrogance. Verse of the Quran. God does not impose upon any soul a duty, but to the extent of its ability. Okay? What happens when a person becomes too arrogant that there won't be any way back for him? He will start to run out of excuses. Hujjah in Arabic. Okay? Not that hujjah is translation of excuse. Hujjah can be translated as reasons. But the word hujjah is associated here. So he increases his chances of punishment in the hereafter. Okay? Now this is a key point and the end of my part 1 talk. When God is like this, we too have to be like it. And in fact, we are like it. How many of you are teachers or have taught students? Okay, so we have a couple, we have 3, 4. I myself, I've been teacher for the last 30 years. If you know that a student has done an honest mistake, not because he was lazy, not because any of that, he just got it wrong, you will try to find a way to help him. If you say, oh, I don't care, that student was lazy and didn't read the questions correctly, I give him 0. And that student honestly thought that the exam was tomorrow, not today, and didn't come today, I give her 0 as well. Is this fairness? This is not fairness. I cannot put the two of them in one place. How can I do that? I come to you, brother. I'm saying it. If we judge or punish someone without the above criteria, what was the criteria? Let us remind ourselves. What was the criteria? Conviction, honesty. If we judge or punish someone without the above criteria, then we cannot call ourselves servants of God, let alone a Muslim. How can we do that? When God himself does not judge like that, how can we do that? When God says that honest mistake will be forgiven, how can we even start thinking that we cannot forgive that? Who are us? Who are we to talk like that? Are we becoming more strict than God? Are we becoming more Muslim than Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? God wants to forgive people and send them to heaven. We say, no, that's not a good thing. Send them to hell. Is that the way that we are doing? If this is the way, then I need to remind us a verse in the Bible from Jesus that I think is an authentic verse, who says, you will be judged in the same way that you judge people in your life. Are we sure that we are in the exactly right path in Islam? Are we sure about that? Who can raise his hand just now and tell me I'm absolutely sure that the understanding of Islam that I'm following is 100% correct? Please, tell me, who? I cannot say that. Now, if I judge all of you, he doesn't think like me, he goes to hell. She doesn't think like me, she goes to hell. He doesn't think like me, let us go and kill him, right? If I think like that, then what will I do in the hereafter? If God tell me, Abdullah, you remember how you judge people? I want to judge you the same way. Where are you going to end up? Brother.
The question is that if a person who believes honestly that killing non-Muslims is good, he's honestly believing that, he goes and kills 100 people. So how we or God can be fair towards that guy, even though we know that he was honestly doing the right thing?
Very good question, brother, and I was waiting for that question to come. You see, brother, there are certain things that God is very sensitive about them, very sensitive. One of them is life of human being. What does he say in the Quran? He says that if you kill somebody not for the correct reason, it is like you have killed all human beings. The expression is so strong, brother. I think to go and kill people just like that is so much against the nature of a reasonably purified human being that it is very, 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 very unlikely that somebody can say, I'm honestly going to do that. Because that honesty, to me, most probably is rooted in lots of impure features in the personality of that person. Unless, of course, if the person is, for instance, I don't know, mad, or his thinking is not right, he does not have the IQ that normal people have, and he has been just, people have just given him something to and blow himself and really doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, that's a different story. But for that person, I think there is no justification. Having said that, brother, remember that we can never say that he goes to heaven, he goes to hell. We can never say that. We leave it for God. But we can explain what the criteria is, what the principles are.
I was talking about the ignorance. I mean, I personally, not many, but people who are easily kind of brainwashed, I'd say, or radicalized, are probably quite ignorant. And maybe very innocent as well, in the sense that they've been told in a way or are taught in such a way that they are easily manipulated. And then they put a waste on and then go and blow 100 people, kill 100 people. then by your definition, they might be forgiven.
I can only repeat what I said, brother, that killing is something that requires quite something in here, okay? We do have some psychologists here that can explain that, okay? It's not that easy. I can't just say, oh, you know, honestly, I cannot do that, yeah? It needs to be something going on here. Either here, if it is madness, something, yeah, inshallah, God will forgive the person. He's just mad. He's not the same person. But other than that, if it is here, it is my very strong belief that it is not as easy as that. It is very much similar to the concept of shirk. God says in the Quran that He will forgive everything other than shirk, polytheism, right? I still believe, based on the Quran, because we need to put the instructions of the Quran in hierarchies and see what supersedes what. Yeah. So if there is an honest shirk, I still believe he will be forgiven. However, I find it very, very, very difficult for a person to come up with an honest shirk. A shirk meaning that the person knowingly says there is more than one God, in that meaning. Otherwise, aspects of shirk can be found even among Muslims. Yeah? But a mushrik is a person who you ask him, how many gods you have? And he says, 15, very proudly. That will be mushrik. Okay? Just that it is in the nature of human being that if you recognize God, then you will recognize that there should be one God. Okay? Also, there is in nature of human being enough goodness that make him to hate killing people. See, when God is talking about qisas of a murder, He says, don't have rahmah on him. God appreciates even that dislike that we have for a murderer. God appreciates that we even have dislike for killing a murderer, okay? Because we don't like kill people. God appreciates that, yet says, if it's intentional murder, do it. Now, let alone for killing that many people. Okay, thank you very much.